Oh, okay.
Maybe it works differently at NIH.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tony Calise from FBI. I just want to introduce the folks that were in our room. We're all in the conference room with Eric Roth, developer, seeing his screen. Myself, Tony Calise. Met a couple voices on the phone sound familiar there. I had worked on the prototype of this last year, I believe. And then also in the room we have Ledwin Nahara, our designer, Yume, Laura, and Michael in the room. On the phone here, I think I heard Betty and Maureen. And I see a lot of familiar names there too. Udi, Robert Gore Langdon. Anyone else? Is Gita coming? Is she on the phone?
Or anybody we missed?
Okay.
Betty, should we go ahead without Geetha or give her a couple minutes? Did we lose people?
I think Geetha mentioned to me that she would be joining.
Let's give it 2 more minutes and then maybe that's her.
No, Rodney has arrived.
Hi, it's Rob.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Rob.
I was trying to use headphones and microphone, but I couldn't get the microphone to work, so I called in.
Well, I've had that issue before.
Maureen, I have one quick question.
Yep.
About next Wednesday's meeting. Yep. I saw that I was last on the agenda. Do you think 8 slides is reasonable in terms of the amount of time that I'll have?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Just have two projectors, Udi, 2 slides at a time.
Thank you. What? Yeah, I think, yeah, thanks, Rob.
Somebody else just joined?
This is Rodney from FEI.
Hey, Rodney.
Hey.
We're just giving it 1 more minute to see if Geetha arrives, and then we'll get started. All right, why don't we go ahead and get started?
Okay, and then for the purpose of note-taking, would folks object to me also recording this meeting to just make sure I don't miss anything? Usually it's not an issue. Okay, excellent. Go ahead and record this, and the link to the site we sent out, the meeting will be available for an encore presentation if anyone wants. All right, Eric. We are here to demonstrate, do a demonstration of Pro Center. On our recent sprint, we started where we last left off when we were working with NIDA. We had prototyped the clinical decision support that Geeta had worked on. And one of the last steps there is that a plan of action or some guidance would be provided based on the information that the patient put in there, ranging from high intensity, and I believe that was a color of red, to a medium intensity, which was an amber color, or one where there really is not much else that's required other than to perhaps provide positive feedback to a patient that choosing to live a healthy lifestyle where they don't use, where they basically enter 0 on that screen, or where they don't use purposes. So what we are going to demonstrate here, what Eric's going to demonstrate here, is kind of what the Pro Center, which is the software portion of this one, this report capability that we have, where at the conclusion you'll see a patient has, we're going to have a patient that's registered in the red zone, the high sensitivity, and kind of here the current design that we have with the suggested plans of actions, and have it show up in a report.
Yeah, so this is Eric Roth. I thought I'd start out with just kind of a brief overview on kind of what Pro Center was meant to be. So really it's just kind of like a cloud-based platform for hosting types of assessments. And then we wanted to have the ability to be able to tie assessments together in kind of like a workflow. So you can have multiple assessments in the system and tie them together in some logical manner based on the scoring algorithms that each one of those produce. So essentially what you're seeing here is just the main screen, where when you log in, you'll have your little dashboard screen that will show you your patients, any recent assessments that have been completed. Also, if you have the correct rights, you'll be able to have the admin kind of workspace that will show you some items around the administration of the facility you're in. These dashboards, we envision them having multiple types of functionality and uses. So each one of these kind of dashboards, if you click on something, will expand out into this kind of bigger view of each one of these little widget tiles that show up. We also have the ability to be able to activate and deactivate assessments per organization. So you'll see that down here. There's this capability to add and remove assessments that you see in the system. But the main purpose of this is kind of to show just the only reports we have so far in the system are the ones that are associated with this kind of NIDA workflow that you go through to be able to get to these intensity levels. So I will go ahead and click on a patient, and when you click on a patient, you'll see that it opens up and see this patient's dashboard of recent activity. This is a clean system, so this patient doesn't have anything in it. But I will go ahead and add the NIDA single question screener as the initial assessment here. And you'll see it's just one question. So this is the question that drives whether you continue on the flow, or you just get a nice little summary report saying, good job for not really doing any drugs other than for medical reasons. So I'm going to go ahead and put 0 down for this just to show the initial green flow. So you'll notice that there's no save buttons anywhere. Essentially the way the system works is it'll auto-save as you go along. So once I click off of this question, it'll go ahead and tell me it's saving and show me a little checkbox. And you also notice now that because I answered all the questions, there's a submit button that will show up on the top right corner. So I can now go ahead and click submit up here, and you'll see it tells me I've scored 0 because I put down 0 for this report, and it just tells me it's been submitted and is read-only. So now if I go back to the patient's dashboard, you'll see that in this report widget, there's now this report that was created based off of that screener. You'll also see down here in the recent assessments that the screener shows up and tells me that's 100% complete. As well as over here on this left-hand side is what we kind of envision being kind of like a patient feed that could contain a bunch of different information about the patient's current status. But for right now, all they have is that one screener. But back to the reports, you'll see 2 buttons over here, the customize and the view. So what we wanted to give the ability for the users to do is be able to customize the text of these reports based off of their needs or wants. So if you click on the customize button, you'll see this little pop-up comes up that kind of shows you what the content is going to be on the report. So I can go in here and modify any of this, putting in punctuation to say yes. I can also uncheck any of these things to have it hide or show. And then I can view the report, and it'll show up in a nice little report viewer widget, which allows me to both print and save to PDF and any of those types of functionality that we want to do. And it opens up in a new tab, so I have to switch back over to the other tab. And I can demonstrate now, if, say I didn't want to schedule a follow-up appointment, I can just uncheck this box. And now if I view the report, it just shows up with the basic, just congratulations text on leading a healthy lifestyle. So that's kind of like the green flow. But if I go into the system and unless there's any questions anyone has about any of that?
Yeah, it has been a while. Is everyone familiar with those three flows? Should we revisit that, or would we need to? With the original requirements, does that need revisiting, or are those fairly fresh?
They're fresh for me.
Okay.
So I will now go in and create another single question screener.
Can we?
And this time I will put. I'm sorry. Did someone say something?
Yeah. Can we just step back for 1 minute? Is it possible? And could you please clarify whether or not this CDS is expected to be integrated with risky alcohol screening, for example, and tobacco screening? I mean, how is this going to be integrated in your REM system in terms of screening?
So,
yeah, that's good.
So, yeah, this is a standalone service on its own. So we expose a bunch of web services that could be integrated with an EHR. So if you had an EHR and just wanted to integrate with this system, you could do that. Or it could be used as just a standalone system that you log into. And it's designed in a generic way to host any type of assessment. This is just kind of an example of assessments that we have so far, mainly related to this NIDA series.
Yeah, and I should also just clarify that SAMHSA is no longer building REM because of issues with the vendor community. We're building modules that can integrate with electronic health records, but we're not building an electronic health record anymore. And as far as how things would integrate, so this is the first tool that's or screener that's being implemented into the system, but the intention is for it to be extensible so that any valid, reliable tool can be integrated into, and that the provider would be able to adapt the clinical decision support reporting functions to the screening tool assessment that's included.
So, Maureen, are you thinking that this tool can be into somebody's EHR, or they can only link out and use it in the cloud-based environment? I mean, I'm trying to see how, in practice, somebody would use it.
So both. I think our intention is that it can serve as a freestanding, cloud-based service.
Okay, sure.
That also is integratable with electronic health records.
So there would be code available that the vendors could use.
Eric can that one. I'm not sure
Would
how.
this be code, or would it just be a service that's available?
I mean, I'm thinking, say somebody wanted to implement it in Epics. How would they do that?
Yeah, so I mean, we would provide them with an API where they can use it to connect with it. So they would have to write code toward our APIs that we have available as a service.
Okay.
Alternatively, it will also be, available as an open source code. And so if they wanted to take the code and integrate it into their own system and then, maintain it, then they could also do that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking they have a lot of things already built in their system, and now they want to build out this additional thing. Now they want it to be transparent. They don't want to sort of have to log in and go outside and that they want it to be part of their EHR.
Right. And the way we've designed our web services is that it's through a single sign-on model. So if they conform to our APIs, we have it in a way where they won't have to log in again, and we try to make that integration as seamless as possible. But for big systems like Epic, they may want to just integrate it directly in, but we're also targeting smaller providers that may not have that capability.
Sure.
So we're trying to give them that flexibility where we can host it, but still give them that tight integration from the user standpoint where they think it's all just one system.
Okay, so I mean there would be some support, you know, how to do this or integration support?
Yes, yes, we're coming up with documentation and all that around how to do that type of integration.
Right, okay, good.
And
So, hi,
also
so I have a question, just so that I can visualize what this might look like. So let's assume, at a later stage when you've developed the modules for alcohol and tobacco, for example, and tobacco may be already there in most EHRs. So would this screen sort of have all the screen questions in here, or would you have to open each module to ask the screen, then ask the brief assessment questions, and then kind of close out, go to the next one?
Well, it's a workflow question, but this is Gita. I think. Is that Gita? Okay.
So I mean, it can be the whole framework is designed in a very generic way. So we can create the assessments in any way that the person creating the assessment chooses to do it. Now, we're not giving like the end user the ability to create assessments, but whenever we want to create a new module or tool in the system, we can set it up to show it all on one screen. We can set it up to have certain sections on any given screen. So it's very flexible in how it's presented to the user. So really, and we also have the ability to tie them together. So if I show this example here where really this assessment we just initially designed having one question in it. So when I finish it, and I go ahead and click submit, if it's part of this higher level workflow, you'll get this little message that will show up here that says, because this patient scored a certain amount on this assessment, we're recommending you take the next assessment, which is the drug abuse screening test. So we could have created just one assessment that contains all the questions, or we can split them out into these distinct groups of functionality based off of if this certain part of this assessment tool could be reused in some other workflow for some other type of assessment flow. So we're trying to be very flexible on how we structure these things. So now if I click like administer the next assessment, new questions will come up in the same window for further questions that could be part of that flow.
I think since the DAST is a self-administered assessment, and now you have for the single question drug screener a question that wasn't designed to be self-administered, it may be worthwhile to update such that it's consistent. The self-administered single item, the drug screening question, single item screener, such that it could be self-administered, because Rich States recently developed and adapted this question in a self-administered format.
So if I understand it correctly, the workflow
very similar. It's very similar, so you won't have any trouble changing it.
Yeah, I
right.
mean, you
have the system. Sorry.
I'm saying you have some verbiage to clarify it and make it such that patients can understand it better. I think
right.
Yeah.
We're also going to be supporting a patient portal, which will allow for self-administered assessments. And we're going to have the distinction to be able to, when you're creating assessment, to mark it as being able to be patient-administered or just clinician-administered. So we have all that concept that will be coming once we get this a little further along. So right now we're only really showing kind of the clinician-based view of it, but there will also be a patient self-administered view of the system as well.
So when you have a patient self-administered view, it may be worthwhile to have in that patient self-administered view, what I'm saying is the single item screener such that it would be compatible with being patient self-administered.
Yes.
And I think we can update you with verbiage such that that question can be compatible to that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so I will now kind of fill out the next two assessments in a way to get it to show the amber level, just by I kind of know what I have to do to get it to show up. So again, now that I've answered all the questions, I get the submit button at the top. And again, it's now saying because I scored a certain amount on this screener, I should now go on to the next portion, which talks about what kind of drugs use I've had. And I will again just fill it out in a way to get it to show up as amber as a result instead of the high intensity level. And now when I submit this assessment and I go back to the dashboard, you'll see now that there's a second report that's showing up here. And if I click the customize for this report, you'll see that there's more options that they can fill out. But one thing to note, there's also a section at the top here that's not editable, and it's just kind of the summary of what they filled out in the assessment. But then the list of recommendations or resources you want to provide to the patient are editable, and you can check or uncheck or edit any of these things to change the way you want to present this information to the patient.
So if you elect to not check it, then the guidance that was recommended just doesn't show up in the reports, right? So all the things with the checkbox are the types of guidance that are available based on that algorithm.
So yeah, so I'll just to demonstrate, I'll uncheck one box here, and when I view the report, that section about the appointment doesn't show up. But another kind of nice thing here is that we can have active links show up in these reports. So a resource for the patient could be this link, and these links even show up if you convert it into a PDF. So if I save this as a PDF and say I can then maybe email it to the patient or give it to them in some electronic means, they'd be able to just click these links within the PDF and still be able to access those resources. It's just kind of a neat feature in the reporting tool that we're using. That way we can kind of make it a little more cutting edge for these types of resources to give.
Yeah, it probably has to be a little more specific than Health and Human Services, or it's not going to be very useful.
Yeah, all the text we just put in as the default could be text, but we would definitely like input on all of these possible values. So it might be a good idea for us to send out something afterward that shows all this text. Mm-hmm. And kind of get direct feedback on that?
Well, in fact, our source on this one is the documentation that we had, NIDA's documentation that we had in there, just to make sure it's lined. But then all this, too, you could type into it. So if you had a resource that you know that just is spot on, whether, I don't know, WebMD or something like that, you could type that in that text box as well.
So I can just go in here and type any www.site that I want to.
WebMD, for example. I don't know what other ones would be used.
Right, and all that would show up on the report as well.
And then just well, and then I guess at some point we'll come back to it, but that other question, I think we had the naming on it, but since Gita's here, we can check with her too. That screening that right now says the assess further, we had proposed a wording that is the assess substance and treatment history. I think we'll probably see that. Yeah, right now it says the NIDA assess further. That's one that asks the questions about your use of specific drugs, if you've had injection drug use or have been, I believe, in an institution.
I can jump to that section quick, because the last thing we'll show is the high intensity flow. So if I go and I'll fill this out quickly this time just to get to that.
So that right now it says the NIDA assess further, but I believe on this one, either with the naming change, assess substance and treatment history be a suitable alternative, since the assess further isn't really an official NIDA assessment. Edith, if you're on, you might be on mute.
I'm sorry. Can you?
Oh, yes, we can hear you now. So one of the things early on when we were prototyping it, we had just stubbed out, said the NIDA assess further, and we said we'd come up with a name at some other point. Now it's in code. Now it's in code. And was proposing the name assess substance and treatment history as an alternative to the NIDA assess further. I just thought since you're on the line, you might be able to.
So maybe something like assess frequency or something like that.
Assess substance and treatment, well, a substance, well, because you'll see further down in this, there's treatment history as well, question. So
I would just, oh, you have, so we had called this additional questions, this whole category.
Okay.
We didn't.
Yes, that had been called, and I wasn't sure if that was in. I think we just put that there. We weren't stuck with it. We had prototyped it, but now it's in the code. So we might want to come, and if we want to come up with the name, I'll pull this up as an action item too. And I can send you a screenshot.
Created it with the group, we just called the whole, all three of them as additional questions to cover frequency, injection drug use, and treatment status.
Yes. Is that the preferred name of those questions, or?
You guys are welcome to be creative. We didn't really give it much thought, so. Okay.
Would it be appropriate to fix a name in front of it, like the NIDA additional questions, or is this, what's the group that came up with the additional questions? If we want to kind of give it a little. And this could be a follow-up item, but it's at the code now, so probably want to firm it up.
Do you have to put NIDA there? Can you just put additional questions, additional CDS questions, clinical decision support questions?
Yeah, it could be additional clinical decision support questions, and then when it has a recommendation, it says, because of this, we recommend that you ask additional clinical decision support questions.
Exactly.
But when we have like a lot of screening and assessment tools there that kind of cover, depression and silence and blah blah blah. When we expand it, does that then get confusing in terms of like what would this be attached to? Like what is it additional for?
Yeah.
Or should it say like DAST follow-up or something?
So. I mean, it may be just me, and I'd like to hear, what Betty and Udi might have to say. I'm just wondering if instead of calling this NIDA, just call them substance abuse, so that the whole process is about the substance abuse, so that you don't have to have. So it'll be substance abuse, clinical decision, additional questions for substance abuse CDS.
Okay, well, and then the part that makes it kind of a weird one is because it actually covers the topics of substance abuse and treatment history in that one section, okay. Just to kind of make the flow.
I'm talking about the whole module, the whole entire thing. If you label it substance abuse, so it's screen, brief assessment using the DAST, followed by additional questions.
Okay.
There's a 3-step process for assessing substance abuse. So just like how you might have a module for depression, this would be your substance abuse module.
Okay. Well, then, right. And,
I'm sorry.
You may want to keep it really simple, because if it's going to be used, by the public eventually, you may want it just to say screener, assessment, further assessment, something really simple like that.
Well, although I would say this is also intended to be kind of not just substance abuse, and so it's intended to kind of have an extensible database of screening and assessment tools, and I think you want something that's at least from the perspective of when when they're setting up their workflows, that they can identify
where it came from,
what the DAST is, which one's the DAST, which one's the assist, which all that good stuff.
But, I mean, I don't know if there's any problem with it saying NIDA. I mean, it could be NIDA recommended screener. NIDA, I don't know if that's too long, but it could be something like that. NIDA recommended assessment, NIDA recommended further assessment. It's a little bit.
This is Betty. I'm just curious. Is this not together with alcohol or smoking? Because I thought it could use it as say something like substance use assessment without labeling which institute, because once you put which institute in there, somehow intuitively, then it becomes kind of territorial, that we couldn't say anything about alcohol, and then they couldn't say something about us, which is not what we intended here. Number one. Number two, if you say something like substance abuse, immediately people thought about really bad things. But I see that you said daily or almost daily. If you ask a question like that, you really basically is assessing the substance use severity or frequency or something like that. I don't know, can you put something that is less of serious issues, because basically we want to assess kind of like your lifestyle or your health information and stuff like that. So that's my 2 cents here. I don't know.
I agree with Betty, and this is really, I think that it would behoove you to look at my own health report of the MORE project and not to kind of use more specific terminology. I would actually recommend that you use their terminology. So they call it health risk assessment, and I think it could be as general as that. And also, I'm wondering if you plan, when you're finished with this, to interface with the MORE project to let them know that you have this CDS, because they are using the same type of questions to assess drug use, Russ Glasgow's group.
So I just want to kind of reframe this a little bit. So yes, we do intend to, and actually that's kind of one of the top ones on our list, is to do the full risky behavior assessment that the OBSSR and Russ Glasgow's group has been working on. But so basically this particular kind of screening flow, the SBIRT or the drug use screening flow, is just one example, and it was the first one that we chose to use just because it's relatively simple, but does have kind of some adaptive testing to it. So I mean, we shouldn't get hung up on the particular screen that we're talking about, because this is intended to have really all validated screeners in the tool that can be used and built into workflows.
So with that in mind, can you just agree to use substance abuse and not get caught up, as Betty said, by institute for each 3 steps of this module?
Absolutely.
Bottom questions, we've grouped them together so it goes quicker. You'll just see the questions at the bottom don't really.
I'm not talking about the 3 on the screen. I'm talking about the screen, the dashed, and the screen. All 3 of them should just say substance abuse. So substance abuse screen, substance abuse brief assessment, and substance abuse additional questions.
Oh, I see.
I thought one of the points was to use substance use rather than abuse, just so it's not a suggestive of bad use.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Well, since I will, I'll re-listen to it and make sure, and I'll send out a recap on what we think we want to do. Since the purpose of this is really just to kind of demonstrate what we built into the code of generating the report, and then I will follow up with just an action item on the naming part, so we don't lose Eric's time on that.
Yeah, we're almost done. So really, after submitting this last assessment here, there'll now be a 3rd report, and this one is at the high intensity level. So you'll notice that there's a lot more options available that talk about things to recommend to the patient, different resources, treatment facilities. And that's it. I mean, each one we try to make consistent, so they all just show kind of like the template of the report, let you change whatever options that you want to change for this particular patient, and then it gives you the ability. And we also want to add to all of them the ability to just add additional notes at the bottom. So any other things that weren't recommended but you want to recommend, you can just type additional notes at the bottom, and it will just also show up in a nice format. And this one is longer, so you see it goes on to 2 pages. So go over here, and you'll see that my initial additional notes were added to the end of the report. We support exporting to all different types of formats. For this particular one, I don't think this Excel spreadsheet makes much sense, but the reporting tool we're using allows us to have the flexibility to do all these different types of reports. We can make them as fancy as we want with rich text and hyperlinks and all of that kinds of stuff. So we can record the whole report in the system without having the need for them to do any copying into any other type of platform. So those are the 3 different workflows that we've implemented. So I don't know if anyone has any additional questions or comments.
So all of this is 508 compliant?
Yes. So we're going to continue to try and make this and keep it as 508 compliant. Yep.
Okay.
So my only suggestion is on these reports, on this flow or this page that we're looking at with the reports, that you know, if there can be kind of the green, yellow, red on there or something on there to indicate which ones the providers need to concern themselves with.
Sure.
That could be useful to kind of, you know, when there's a bunch of them, to be able to go back to identify which ones are the important ones.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Of course, when it comes to the patient filled out one, it shouldn't have that. But
right, the view the patient will see will be a different type of view.
Yeah.
So the action items I'm hearing from this is we've got a naming issue to resolve. I'm going to re-listen to the webinar to see what all of our proposals were. Put that out for a round. Then the other one is the view of the reports, having some sort of indicator on there to indicate what level of intensity they are.
And I think the other thing was to kind of update the language, the template language within the.
Yeah, I think that both the question language, just to make sure we have that the most up to date, as well as the recommendation language that we're using.
In terms of what the patient sees with respect to format, it may be worthwhile, Maureen, to contact Russ Glasgow's group and see how they display the information regarding drug use, the summary information, to make it more palatable to patients. As we recently at NIDA reviewed his display, and I think he finessed it in a way that made it, you know, somewhat palatable to patients to see, regardless of which category they ended up, you know, their feedback.
Yeah, I haven't seen it up. I saw one a couple months ago, and I know I forwarded that on to FEI, so we can take a look at that.
Okay.
Is there going to be some sort of documentation of the algorithm? Because obviously, you know, physicians aren't going to want to use it unless they know how it's working.
So Tony, don't we have the document that talks about what the algorithm is?
Yeah, in fact, if we go up to the Pro Center site, we have all the, not that one, the one on Wikispaces.
Would it be on my email?
You go to, actually, that link that I sent out, we can just go to the, I sent out a link. Yeah, the one before that. The time we can get that. Yep, and go to the main page.
Pro Center?
Yep. And I think we'll see the requirements. Okay, go to either on requirements or yeah, there's the documentation. The That's like NIDA's documentation right there.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that somewhere, if this is not easily available, there should be a button or something where physicians can actually see what the algorithm is.
That is one thing that's on the screen that, there's not like a good attribution at this point saying, hey, this guidance showed up. Why did this guidance show up? Well, the reason why the guidance showed up is because of this Word document that you're looking at right now. So it does seem that there might be this Word document or the contents of this. It might be good if this could be accessible in a format where, if anyone says, why is this showing up here, that maybe there's a URL where you can always show up, because I suspect, as we learn more things, that why things show up would probably change, and questions that you ask, for example, cannabis might not be the way that people ask that question anymore, because it turns out that patients aren't familiar with that, or what have you. So it does seem that we kind of have this requirement, but perhaps having it, it would be good to kind of formalize this one so it's just kind of always available.
Yeah, another thing, Geetha, I think it needs to get published. That's going to be important.
Well, I know the reluctance is it's consensus-based model, but we should. I agree.
Yeah, I mean it can be published on behalf of somebody, but that type of approach.
Your point's well taken.
Yeah. Now,
so right now it's kind of published. It just like happens to be on the internet. It's freely available, but if we could have just a comment spot. And same thing with some of the other questions. Well, the guidance that showed up, there was 2 things of guidance that were recommended, but it was recommended because of this document here. So it seems like there might, there was some sort of an attribution there. So that way, if a doctor thinks that, boy, that's really good guidance, and I want to find out who came up with that, so I can, see if I can get more people to use it.
Right. I mean, there are the references, of course, for the DAS-10 and for the single question screener, and then it's the clinical decision support one that still needs a reference.
But it's, it's just
and all of those should be, attribution should be given for all of them, really.
Yeah, and that's the part where we're kind of missing. So for actions to consider, you're taking a look here under the low intensity. It's recommending 3 boxes with check boxes next to them. So if you had a check box next to that text box, well, then it would show up in the report. And the user doesn't really know why you have it; just kind of is. But the real reason why is because our work group came together with consensus, and we really thought that those are actions that you ought to consider in that group, and there is consensus on it. But what the time you're at the screen, you're not aware of that, right, which may or may not be an issue. But I don't know really how to attribute that, like who came up with the actions to consider, and then because once we figure that out, we need a way to reference it.
Well, that's why it would be a lot easier to put it in a paper somewhere that somebody could refer to, because then the fine wording, could be worked out in the paper and not be dependent on what's on the website.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I was asking how this would be implemented, I'd already talked to Maureen about putting together a website of CDEs, and of course, common data elements, and we have common data elements for all of the questions and groups of questions as instruments for everything that you've shown here today. And we'd like to be able to provide a link or some sort of connection to this system so people could get access to it and know more about it. And, I think some vendors, as I said, might want to be able to install things in their system, and as you said, others may want to just use it on a hosted system. So that's why I've been asking questions about that. And when you get this up and final, I'd like to talk more about how that could happen, because this will be a site that would promote be able to promote this.
What do we have? What should I put down as kind of an action item? That's a good, kind of a good statement. What would be a good tangible next step that moves us, I don't know, one step closer to that, or is there kind of a line of sight on, what we should do if we should do it?
Well, I mean, you may have other things that you're going to do to promote it as well, so those are separate from this. But our website we're hoping to launch in, let's say, a few months, and we'll be adding things of interest to it, and this would just be one of those. So there's no particular deadline or timeline or anything, but it would tie in nicely with the common data elements and instruments, the key ones on that website, to say, well, here's an implementation where it's been put into an online approach to answering these. And, I think to put it on that site, we'd have to provide some explanation of how people could use that. In fact, you may need to have some test cases, of how it's being used online, and maybe some test case of how it's being implemented into an EHR. I wouldn't want to just put up some information that doesn't lead anywhere and just raises a lot of questions. I think by the time we want to get it up there and promote it for vendors to use in various ways, we want to provide as much information as we can so that they can use it, without a lot of complications and further follow-up. So, I think we need to talk about how this would be done. We might start off a few months ahead saying, this is coming up in a few months, that type of a notice, but then we have to be prepared to then have something further later on.
That's good. So in terms of online resources that I'm familiar with right now, NIH has the CDE browser, and that's what we use, and we've got a reference between our data elements that we used in our Pro Center survey and the NIH site. So that covers us with how we could potentially attribute data elements. In terms of the guidance, is that something that be on the, and I don't know how to pronounce it, the EMMES.com website?
I'm not sure what that is.
Oh, I thought this was Robert. That was Robert speaking. I didn't.
It's Rob Gorlangton.
Okay, I thought, aren't you with, isn't that the site that you guys have,
you mean you're trying to say AMIS.
EMMES, yes.
Yeah, no, it doesn't have to, it has nothing to, I mean, that's where I am, but it has nothing to do with AMIS except that we're going to host this CD website, but it doesn't have to say anything or have any connection to AMIS. Just to let you know that the CD browser you have, that's the NCI's browser. So the website we're creating is going to be a simple site that provides access to the CDE tools that are in the CADSR browser. That browser is not very user-friendly, and this is going to be a very simple one-stop shopping site, for people that are looking to do screening, assessment, and clinical decision support based on NIDA recommendations. And so, you'll be able to reference this site, I guess, when it's up, and we would like to then, provide access to tools based on these CDEs that are being developed. And so I'll let you think about that, see how that might work out. But that we would like to do that maybe sometime next year.
Okay. Well, then I guess in the meantime, we'll just want to make sure that whatever we have is in a format or something that's compatible with whatever that site is. So whether it be, so we'll just have to make sure it's compatible. Right now we have the requirements that are in a Word doc that can be attached to a web page. In the future,
we're not actually linking to the Pro Center system itself.
Okay.
So he means just being able to say, once we're up and ready to go with potential people using it, link to that.
Oh, thanks, Eric. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you'd need is something like a demo site that you could go on and see what it is there, and then somebody would look at it and say, boy, that would be nice to have on our EHR, and then maybe some route to go further with it, either documentation that's available on site or somebody to contact to get further information, or however it's going to work. But I think that the thing that would be nice to draw people in would be something that a little description and then a link that they could go to and actually see it work, as a demo.
Well, that sounds great. Would like to, follow up on that. And do you know what the URL of that site was?
Well, we haven't put it out yet, so
okay.
We're still working on it.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, that's something I could definitely follow up on. In terms of action items are coming to an end. That gets some real rough notes.
Yeah, there's another action item. I noticed that one of the sources URLs you referred to is out and should be updated.
Which one is that? The one that was on?
Can you please scroll?
Is that Word document right here that we showed?
Where
needs to be updated?
Refer to the drugabuse.gov, the NIDA page. One of the drug facts URL is out of date. There's a newer website.
Was that error in here? Oh, okay. I can edit that, or do you have have you just modified the Word document? Should I just
Can you?
If you have a new Word document, I could just update that, or would you prefer that I modify this one here? What's the easiest way? Just want that be in sync with you.
Or that screen. Okay. You see where it says examples of sources, and then it says drug of abuse information, first one.
Okay.
It should be, instead of drug pages, after...
I'm sorry, I had to make it editing enabled here. Okay.
Okay, and after drugabuse.gov / instead of drug pages, it should say drugs - abuse. Okay.
Yes. Verify I'm really good at mistyping stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to make sure.
People are watching my screen. Okay, that works.
This is Richard Thorson. I have a comment about the common data elements and also the Pro Center. Everything I assume is being done with standard computer codes. Is that true?
Yes, everything in the system has the capability to be standardized if it is standardized.
I mean, basically what I'm referring to now is national standards.
For common data elements, were you referring to?
Yes.
These are the elements.
ISO IEC 11179 standard.
Okay. So, I mean, we have to go back and check because we have an HL7 summary behavioral health. It's already it's standard, but there may be inconsistencies between whatever ISO has and what we have. And that's fine. We can work those out.
That's the metadata standard. That's the semantic standard. It's nothing to do with data transfer.
It better have something to do with it.
Well, data transfer has to be implemented, with whoever is going to do that transfer. So, I mean, it's not, that's a technical issue. We're just talking about the content.
No, I know, but they go together. So, the important point here is that when you do all this work, you put out common data elements, you're also putting out not just the concepts, and that's great, that's important, but also the computer code, so there's semantic interoperability.
And at this point, Richard, the common data elements have not been harmonized with anything on the HL7 side. We have been using, so it is standards, but it's not the HL7 standard. There's no reason why it couldn't, why someone couldn't do that.
We may have problems, gaps in our HL7 standard, and particularly we want to match up to ISO standards because that's where they're going to go. So we want to do all that. So the reuser doesn't have to worry about it.
I agree with that.
where we are today, anyways, like it's based on this standard, but if there's another standard, the ISO standard, if we can kind of crosswalk.
Yeah, well, that'd be great if you do that. That'd really be great. We could try to do it. We could try to do it HL7, but we'd love to reuse your work.
Well, I'm not sure where we're going to be doing that crosswalk.
Yes, I just want to say that right now it is tied to this, which is on the NCI site. So anything that's crosswalk between the standard from NCI would effectively do that for our system as well. So we don't hold the requirements for the field names. We elected, because we did the mapping exercise with the common data elements, we used, just for the ones that you saw today, we elected to use the common data elements from NCI. But ProCenter is not precluded from using HL7 data elements that just happen to be for this project. That's what we had.
We should be harmonized across NCI, but maybe we're not. So that's just something to do.
Okay, yeah, if that harmonization has happened, then that would make this an easier task.
Yep.
We have not done that, though.
Yeah, there's a gap there. I mean, the CADSR that these are in, that repository does have capabilities to extend information for HL7 and so forth, but it's not been done. But the capability is in that tool to do it.
Well, we don't want extension so much as we want complete harmonization. So
yeah,
if we need to extend what we've done, that's great. We want to do that. But I'm hoping there's whatever overlaps we are completely harmonized.
Right. Rob?
Yeah.
This is Betty. The standard we used, is this per NLM's standard, or we just adopt?
Well, there is no real standard for CDEs because the work group, the trans NIH work group, there's all different people,
right.
Groups doing different things. Now, CADSR, the NCI standard being used is one of them, but some don't have any real standard, and some have other standards.
Yeah.
So our standard is consistent with the NCI standard.
Well, ours has probably more data elements than any standard. Any other standard.
But if you went to the NCI site,
it could be exported or transported into something else eventually.
I think the other question is, are these linked with the SNOMED and MOINT codes that NLM maintains?
Right.
No, I think that they're not.
Okay, so that's something that we're going to need to do.
Right.
Yeah, and as far as ProCenter is concerned, it can support any of those. So we're not locked into any type of standard. We just chose to use this one for now until we found out what the actual standard is going to be. So ProCenter is flexible enough to be able to handle those types of standards.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I have a hard stop at 4 o'clock. I don't know if anyone.
Yeah, I actually do too.
Okay, real quickly, I just want to make sure I have the big action items. We need to resolve the naming issues. I'm going to re-listen to the webinar to make sure I captured all the proposed items. I can just send it out for a vote or rounds or whatever. We talked about having a kind of a custom view on the reports in the UI screen to indicate the level of intensity that's associated with the guidance. Update the template language, and I think, I'm not sure who does that, but that was the update to template language on the guidance. And so I guess maybe that's review and update, and that will be available. I mean, that is available now, but that will be available to with the minutes when I distribute that, and then also publish and distribute the meeting minutes. So I'll send that as well as an encore presentation of the webinar, so I can send that out a little bit later on. So
great. Well, thanks everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks everyone for joining us.